Hey, what's up, guys? Chris Nelson here. It's Wednesday, November 1st, 2023. And finally, the day is here where Governor Ron DeSantis and Florida Surgeon General Joe Ladapo will hit the trail together up in New Hampshire, speaking at a Never Back Down event. And everybody, please like and share this around. The event is beginning at 12 noon. And Dr. Ladapo, let's just go back to who Dr. Joe Ladapo is. All right. So I'm going to play a clip from back in May where Governor Ron DeSantis, well, first he brought in Dr. Ladapo in 2021 as his new Surgeon General. Now, Dr. Joe Ladapo is one of the America's frontline doctors. If you remember, when Fauciism was being pushed in 2020 and it was against the rules to say anything outside of what Fauci and the CDC said, and the censorship was beginning. There was a group of doctors that stood on the steps of the Supreme Court, okay? And Dr. Joe Ladapo was one of them. And they really promoted the use of things like hydroxychloroquine. And they also counteracted what Fauci was saying. And they said that the way to stop the pandemic from spreading was to protect the very vulnerable, and then also to keep schools open and to not allow the teachers' unions to take control of it. You remember this? And so Ladapo was there. And of course, media just slammed DeSantis for making Ladapo his attorney general or his surgeon general. Now, the thing about Ladapo, he's not some quack doctor, okay? He he worked at UCLA Medical Center, and let me just get his book really quick. This is his book, Transcend Fear, which Robert F. Kennedy actually wrote the forward to. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wrote the forward to this. Read this book, A Blueprint for Mindful Leadership in Public Health. And check it out about Dr. Joseph Ladapo is the Surgeon General of Florida and professor at University of Florida College of Medicine. He received his MD from Harvard Medical School. Okay? He's a Harvard graduate, just like DeSantis, and PhD in health policy from Harvard Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. Dr. Ladapo worked as an associate professor of general internal medicine and a health policy researcher at UCLA David Geffen School of Medicine in Los Angeles. All right, so when you read this book and you find out that things weren't working out so well with the Fauciism and what was going on, and we had a really crappy Surgeon General here in Florida who actually DeSantis had him removed from a press conference because he was pushing Fauciism. Actually, that's a clip that I wouldn't mind playing. Okay, this was the Surgeon General we had at the time. And check out what DeSantis did in this press conference and how he had him removed. This is what Trump should have done with Fauci. This is how you handle a little snot like this, okay?
In the environment, and this is a tough virus, we're going to have to practice these measures so that we are all protected.
Boo! this was the Surgeon General we had at the time, Scott Rivkees. Listen to what he's asked. He's asked by media. This was back in April 13th, 2020. And he's asked by media if we have to wait for a vaccine to come before our lives can return to normal. Listen to what then Surgeon General Rivkees says and watch what happens to him afterwards. A giant cane comes from off stage and yanks him off. That's what should have happened, but watch.
Yeah, based upon what has been reported, probably a year, if not longer, is what some individuals have talked about.
Are there any questions? Are there any
Look.
questions for Secretary Mayhew? I know she's got to run.
Now watch what happens.
Questions for Secretary?
So there's the Florida Surgeon General, all right, at the time. He told media, and you heard everybody gasp, that we were going to have to wait over a year for a vaccine to come, and then things could return to normal. And look what happens when this lady comes out. DeSantis sent this woman out. And no. That ain't going to fly in Florida. Watch.
Residents or staff in a long-term care facility after Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach. Then you've got Leon.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Did you hear what she said? I heard it loud and clear. You gotta go, is what she said. All right? This cannot be overplayed because you say that, Trump, at the time, he was going off the best information he had. When a little medical dweeb, overpaid bureaucrat comes out in front of cameras, and I don't care if it's the freaking bubonic plague. If a little dweeb in a lab coat comes out in front of the cameras and tells everybody in America that you're going to have to wait a year or maybe longer and put your life on hold until then, until we come up with a vaccine, you got to go. You got to freaking go. That's the only response to that. So, when Trump says that, DeSantis loved Fauci or whatever, no. Because this is the representative of Fauci here in Florida, and this is what DeSantis had done when he started spouting this crap about you're going to be held hostage. Because basically it's a hostage situation. We're going to hold the country hostage until, and screw with you and your family and your right to make a living and work and contribute and do the things you love. You got to wait a year. Are you freaking kidding me? This is how you handle this, okay? I don't care what his medical degrees are. I don't care about anything. It's a moral issue with this. And DeSantis knew exactly how to handle it. I'll play it again from the beginning.
So as long as we're going to have COVID in the environment, and this is a tough virus, we're going to have to practice these measures so that we are all protected.
Do you see obviously a vaccine could be the time frame we're looking at?
Yeah, based upon what has been reported, probably a year, if not longer, is what some individuals have talked about.
Are there any questions? Are there any questions for Secretary Mayhew? I know she's got to
Asshole.
run, Secretary. Is there any questions for Secretary?
Of residents or staff in a long-term care facility after Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach. Then you've got Leon. Then you've got even smaller Clay County and Suwannee County. What do you
Start to see cases.
This is what you do. This is how you handle little twerps like this. You gotta go. You gotta go. Get out of here. You're fired. Get lost, a-hole. All right, that's how you handle that. Did you see that? She said, sorry, you gotta go. And that was DeSantis. It would have even been funnier if DeSantis came. But when DeSantis saw him say that, he hit the roof. And it's because DeSantis has it's a moral issue here, okay? I don't care how bad the virus is. You don't tell a country that you got to change your way of life now for a year until we come up with a vaccine. Instantly, anybody who understands the Constitution and read this. So anybody who understands that knows that that doesn't work. That's going to cause more problems. How many people died around the world because of the economy being shut down? How many people went without food in African countries? I mean, America's economy feeds a lot of the world, produces a lot of, how many people in the island countries that rely on tourism got screwed? All right? And in comes Dr. Joseph Ladapo. Let's get his awesome face on the screen and get that dweeb off. In comes Dr. Joe Ladapo. All right? And if you read this book, you find that DeSantis actually, DeSantis looked for him, searched for him, okay? And he talks in his book about getting that call, and he got a call, and it was the governor of Florida. Hey, this is Governor DeSantis. Hey, Dr. Ladapo, I was wondering if you would want to be Surgeon General of Florida. Rivke's never made another appearance. That was it for him. So it's not just a theory that DeSantis would have fired Fauci, or that he didn't go along with Fauci, or that Trump didn't understand it. No, DeSantis actually did it. He did it with the Fauci of Florida. All right? And we can say for sure, based on that had DeSantis been president in 2020, you would have seen about the same thing. You would have seen around in April, which was very early on in the thing, him yanking Fauci. He would have yanked Fauci out. Now, with Rivke's, he couldn't fire him right away. There was a process he had to go through. So Rivke's was still Surgeon General for a while, but he wasn't in press conferences. He wasn't on stage. He was completely, utterly sidelined until DeSantis could get rid of his little weasel behind. Bye-bye. And guess where he went? I found out where Rivke's went. He went up to Maine, I think. Rhode Island. And he became a little mass Nazi up there. Yeah. I mean, hey, there's plenty of lib blue states that are looking for a little mass Nazi to be their Surgeon General or whatever. Make kids wear 5 masks, but not here in Florida. But not with Ron DeSantis, okay? So in comes Dr. Joseph Ladapo, and this is when we really saw the bucking of the CDC. And DeSantis did a lot of medical roundtables with Ladapo and Jay Bhattacharya, because there was a minority report at this time, which was actually the majority report. But these guys, the Great Barrington Declaration by Jay Bhattacharya, these other Stanford University and virologists, and these aren't quack doctors. And I get it. There were some quack doctors in the anti-vax stuff, okay? There were some grifters, there were some quacks, okay? But these weren't them, okay? Ladapo was not. These are people that graduated Harvard, and Ladapo talked about when he was, read his book, Transcend Fear. Look, this book is written for like people with short attention spans. It's that thick, okay? Forward by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., okay? And he talks about the struggles he had in his life. Ladapo was actually born in Africa. I think Nigeria. Had some, was abused as a child, actually. And had to do things in his life to overcome this. And he talks about how he was very respected out in UCLA. I mean, a very respected man in his field. And then when he started to have a different approach to the COVID stuff is when his colleagues started acting weird towards him, almost the way the Trump people are acting nasty towards us now. And it just with the Trump people today, it reminds me so much of during the pandemic when people started acting weird. But he talks about that. Oh shoot! Here, I'm gonna switch connections. I hope I don't go out here when I do this, but I'm switching connections really quick. I forgot to connect to my. All right. Okay. Now we're gonna have a better connection. Okay. Um, but so he didn't fit anymore. He didn't want to put masks on his kids either. And when he got the call from the governor, it's all here in his book about getting that call. And also, you want to know something interesting? Ladapo met with Trump. Ladapo, Bhattacharya, and these guys, they met with Trump. Look, in 2020, there they are. There's Ladapo, there's Bhattacharya, there's Scott Atlas. They met with Trump in 2020 and said, Fauci is full of crap, and you need to not listen to him, and you need to listen to us. And Trump, you cannot say, this was in 20, you cannot say that Trump did not know that the facts of masks not working, shutting down the country not working, holding the country hostage for a vaccine was not the right way to go. And Ladapo talks about it in his book about when it comes to public health policy, you must put first the rights of the individuals. You can't just take away constitutional rights. You must balance that. And that must be tantamount and first before anything else. And that's what Trump took out. And a big problem with Trump, and I mean this when I say it, is I don't think Trump knows what the Constitution says or understands it. I don't think he cares to. And that's a big problem for him. And that's a difference between him and DeSantis. But Trump knew. Ladapo met with him. All right. But DeSantis did listen to Ladapo. DeSantis did bring in Scott Atlas. And this was at a time where that was not popular to do. And while Trump was going along with the media, going along with Fauci, DeSantis brought in the guys who had a different approach and fired the mini Fauci here in Florida and put in Ladapo. So this should be beginning soon. And here's something else. It's just now been revealed that Fauci, a Fauci-run lab in Montana, experimented with coronavirus strains shipped in from Wuhan a year before the pandemic began. Oh, gee. I mean, look, I have questions as to how real this COVID actually is, but because we know they pumped up the deaths and they misdiagnosed a lot of people to really overhype it. But let's just say that, yeah, it's a real thing. It had to have come from somewhere. So there's Fauci experimenting like the little mad scientist that he is with coronaviruses in Montana a year before the alleged pandemic began. All right. So next week, there's going to be a special session here in Florida, and DeSantis's campaign schedule, except for the Sunshine Summit or whatever the heck it's called here in Florida, where Trump will be at that. That'll be interesting on Saturday in Orlando. His campaign schedule is starting to slow down a little bit, and I think it's coming up to the special session. Maybe this is being streamed on Never Back Down. I guess I should have checked before I... All right. Okay. It should be streamed. Hopefully, let's see. I was hoping that it would be streamed here. Geez, if it's not being streamed, then that would suck. It's got to be getting streamed somewhere. Let's let me find this. All right. I'm gonna go to DeSantis channel because it should be starting here. Okay. Neverbackdown.com/events. Oh. I'm so used to these things as being streamed right on. Okay, here we go. Okay. Ladapo will be attending in his personal capacity. Okay. All right. I hope this thing is streamed. Let's see if it's on Ron DeSantis. All right.
The State Department says more than 20,000.
All right. Here we go. Okay. It says starting soon. Okay. It says 12 p.m. So here we go. It says it's starting in a minute here, but until that starts, let me play some stuff from some things from Dr. Ladapo, some things that that he said, because he's just been absolutely fantastic, and really here, I mean, he has been the leader in the country.
Suicide,
All right, here we go.
drug overdose, things like that.
Jason Osborne, everybody.
Right,
This Jason.
exactly.
Yeah,
Lot
go
of things.
Jason.
How many of us are ready for some accountability?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jason Osborne.
And how many of us are ready for a reckoning?
Let's go.
And it just so happens I got someone here today who's going to bring that reckoning, who's going to bring that accountability when he gets to the White House. Before he comes out, I'd like to introduce someone else who's very important. Someone from the other side of the continent, was a UCLA professor who started writing about what was being done and how it was wrong and how it wasn't working, and caught the attention of the governor from Florida, who brought him out to be the Surgeon General in Florida. I asked him how that went, because I kind of had an idea. It's like, did it take a lot of talking? Did it take some convincing? And he's like, no. Yeah, he called one day and said, hey, I need you to leave your life behind, come to Florida and help me save Western civilization. And he was there within 2 weeks, I believe he said. So with that, let me introduce Dr. Joseph Ladapo.
Yeah. Woo. Start me up. There he is. All right. Let's go. What happened to the volume?
Hello, everyone. Hello, New Hampshire. So I didn't know how this would be, and this is confusing, because people behind you, and I wonder who designed this. I guess it gets most people in the room, maybe. But I feel, I'm thinking I want to be talking, and I want to see everyone I'm talking to. So maybe I'll keep spinning. So yeah, well. So I flew up this morning, and first of all, I'm really happy to be here, and I really had no idea what this would look like. So this is a shock to me, and I'm really happy to be here. I love chatting with people and talking with people about different ideas, and I like New Hampshire. So I went to med school here. Our governor, not here, in the Northeast, I should say, at Harvard. In Boston, our governor, I know, but something good came of it. Something good came of it. So the good thing that came of it, related to New Hampshire, is that I actually have very fond memories of New Hampshire, because I learned to ski here. Went up with friends to mountains. I learned to ski here, and when I met my wife, and my wife moved to Boston, Cambridge. Before we were married, we would take trips up north and come, look at the leaves change, and I learned what maple candy was and stuff like that. So only really nice thoughts about New Hampshire. Now I have a day job in Florida now, but I'm here today because I was invited to come to support a man that I feel I have a great deal of admiration for. And of course, you guys know that man is Governor DeSantis. And I should tell you that, on the spectrum of, where do you want to spend your time and your energy in your life, like politics was about as far away as you can imagine for me. When I was in Los Angeles and working at UCLA, I was a professor there. I was taking care of patients. I was a classic sort of nerd professor. I had multiple NIH grants. I love research. I did a PhD while I was up here in Boston, while I was in medical school. That's how much I love research, right? You put yourself through 4 more years of school, and heaven knows how much more work and just effort. So I love research. I love taking care of patients. I was getting to do all of that at UCLA. I was very happy. And I was tenured also, so I had a job for life, so it's great, right? Beautiful city, lots of great restaurants, lots of great things to do, beautiful beaches, great university, my kids are happy, my wife's happy. I was all set. And then the pandemic started. And, God was so kind. He had me working in the hospital, taking care of patients, the week that governor of California, who shall not be named, shut down the state. So I was taking care of patients that week. And my wife and I, of course, anyone who has small kids knows how this goes. The first thing we think is, oh crap, what are we going to do about the kids? Because you can't take them, can't put them in school. And and we got through that. After that initial shock, and there I was that very week taking care of patients, including some COVID patients in the hospital, and it was like the experience working in the hospital that week was as if it was really fascinating. It was like someone took a blanket of pure fear and laid it over the administrators of the hospital. The people working in the hospital really just pressed it over everyone, and there was this atmosphere of panic in the hospital, for sure. One of the things, how do you know there's panic? We would literally get new protocols every single day that I work. We would get messages about, okay, here's what we're doing about masks today. Okay, now we don't have enough of this. Oh, now we expect you to do this. Now do that. Every day, pure panic, right? Literally the worst position a person can be if they want to make a good decision. And ironically, it rises up at the times we could do best without it, right? Like the most critical times are also the times that invite the most panic and fear. And that's what I was witnessing it. I personally, fortunately, thanks to personal work that I did before the pandemic to really work on my spirit and my soul, I wasn't feeling it. I certainly saw that things where I'd been following things along. I saw that there was data from Wuhan at that point. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people had already been infected. There were case mortality rates. We already knew that it was a disease that was primarily one that unfortunately affected older people and really pretty much left kids alone in terms of any major consequences. But it can be very serious. And I was there working and literally seeing people lose their minds, lose their, really go off in this place of flight in front of me. And, just got through that week taking care of patients, chatting with my wife about what was going on, and didn't agree with what was going on. Didn't think it made sense to do lockdowns without talking about what your plan was when you opened up, right? Because what is your plan when you open up? Nothing changes in terms of the virus. It's still there. Didn't think it made sense to cut off a integral part of the social structure of children with closing schools, right? Like, that's part of routines or part of what make children feel safe and secure. Didn't think that made sense to just do that and not think about what your plan is after that. Really didn't think it made sense to take people who had built their livelihoods with businesses and tell them that they couldn't work anymore. I mean, anyone who's run a business knows that it's like, at least a small business, it's like having another kid, right? It's this full-time dedication occupation, please, and take care of their lives and pursue their dreams. It made sense to just dismiss that stuff. And so I started writing, and I was a really popular, very successful professor at UCLA, and I became a very unpopular, very successful professor at UCLA because I was writing these things, and UCLA and the state of California and the New York Times and everyone else really was saying something different. Was not really considering. They weren't considering these issues that just seemed to my wife and I completely obvious. And now, of course, they were obvious, and there were other people that were saying it. But we look back at now what happened, right? Record rates of alcohol abuse, drug abuse, overdoses, kids. I mean, it's crazy. Can you imagine that double-digit percentages of children have thought about suicide? Like that's not a healthy society, and they created that. That's not something that's natural. That was all created by the terrible, inhumane policies that leaders of this country, of literally every single state minus one, of Florida, those were all creations of people's actions and their attention and where they concentrated their interests and their beliefs, right? And so I became an unpopular but very successful professor at UCLA. And I slogged along and got increasingly unpopular as I called out the mask complete localness, right? It's this separation from sense and reality, to think that if only we can get those 4-year-olds to keep that mask on, that's what's going to save the day. Everything's going to be okay if we can just get, I mean, it's like wake me up, please.
Yeah.
But I could, unfortunately, there was no waking up. It just kept going, and I got more and more unpopular, and my wife was more and more unhappy with UCLA. Very unhappy she was. She was very unhappy with them. She was very unhappy with how they were treating me, how the administration was treating me, and all that stuff. And I wasn't happy with it, but I had a job for life and was doing good work, and wasn't as popular as I used to be. But I figured, we'll stick around, honey. We'll stick around. And then, fortunately, one day out of the blue, I got a phone call. And I got a phone call from Governor DeSantis' office, and they told me they had a vacancy coming up, and they were looking for a new Surgeon General. And I got the news, and I was just thinking, that's awfully strange. I mean, I didn't know what to think. And, you know, at the time my wife was out. I think she was at a physical therapy appointment or something. And she got home and I said, honey, I got the strangest call today. You know, Governor DeSantis' office called me and they want me to be their next Surgeon General. And my wife, she was like, I have it in my mind. She was in the kitchen and she just turned around and said, you should do it. And,
Good wife. Good
and I
wife
was like,
there.
I was not expecting
Yeah.
that reaction.
You gotta have a good wife, man.
I
got
was
one.
not expecting that reaction. We had literally maybe 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks earlier, moved into a house. We had sold our condo and rented a house that had a backyard in West LA because everyone was looking for backyards since society had fallen apart. So you had to create your own sort of mini utopia in your homes. So everyone was looking for a backyard. And yeah, we literally just moved. And she said, honey, that's the call I've been waiting for. And I said, okay. You know, I mean, you know, my wife, she definitely knows best. And so, we were talking. So I let him know I was interested. I think maybe literally a day or two later, I had an job interview with the governor and his chief of staff, Adrian Lucas. It was a fun interview. And then the next day, I got the job offer. It was official, you know. And then we started preparing on how we would move our lives to the other side of the country. And I think the announcement was maybe 4 weeks after that. And, you know, why would a guy, I mean, I love research, love taking care of patients, was very happy as a professor. That was a great job. That was a dream job for me. I get to do my science. If you bring grants, it's the other thing as a researcher, you control your life. Like I had autonomy, like total autonomy. It was great. And our kids were there. LA was crazy, but in general, we were happy. We had our network of freedom-loving friends. You know, we go to the beach together. We spend time together. We complain about the mask together. So we had our friends, and so you know, and I had a job for life, right? And so why would I ever leave all that and take a gamble? And this is a gamble with a big G, right? This is not a little G gamble. Right? You pick up, you uproot, you take your kids out, new job, new state, new everything. That's a big G gamble. And why would I do that? I would do that because I believed in that and believe now in that man. It was very clear to me that that was a man who was willing to do what he believed was right, despite the opposition. I mean, he literally, you know, he was taking at that time, this is 2021, he was taking so much flack. And here he was, I'm going back to that time. Yeah, he was literally the only person in the country in a position of real leadership, of real power, who was calling out the badness. And even more importantly, I mean, there was a lot, and I could tell back then, there was a lot that was bad that he didn't even say, because people were only able to handle so much. Sometimes you can't give them everything at once. And he was, so he was, I remember listening to him, and you can see, if you're looking at him, that he recognizes that even much more is off. Much more is worse than what he's saying, what he's voicing, right? But it's like, it's just this, you know, sort of, sometimes you have to massage people into the truth. It can't, you know, it's more effective to gradually bring them in. And what I loved is that at a very fundamental level, it was very easy to see that he was very clear on what was happening. And what was happening was a campaign against human beings, right? That fundamentally was what was happening. And he could see that, right?
Bingo. Bingo.
You could see that. You could see that in him, that he recognized
Exactly.
that this was, you know, this wasn't some battle over policies, like this is the way we should do it. No, I think this is the way we should do it. No, that's not what this was, and that's not what this is. This was a battle over the existence of human beings, the autonomy of human beings, the ability, the right, or the position of human beings over institutes, or human beings over other people's ideas of what they should be, right? This was fundamentally about what the definition of a human being was. Is a human being an individual with rights, who has sovereignty, who has the right to carve and shape his or her future? Or is a human being a slave of the state, a slave of someone else's ideas and machinations and what they believe that of the lives of others should be? That is and that was the battle, and it still is the battle right now. So that's why we picked up our family and we left, and we took a big G gamble to come to Florida, take the position of Surgeon General, because he saw it clearly. And he saw it clearly when other people either were unable or unwilling to see it, or if they did see it, they didn't have the courage to act. And all of that is powerful, because that's what it's all about, right? Like, what the heck is the point of being here, right? If you're not doing something that you love or that you believe in, like, what's the point, And maybe someone can answer that question and has some answer that is the point, and God bless you if you do. But for me, that is the point, right? That is the point. We are the point. Humanity is the point. Human rights are the point. Love is the point, right? Your ability to define what you want to pursue in your life is the point, right? Your autonomy is the point. Your connection and your relationship to God is the point, right? Right? Hope is the point, right? Your belief in other people, the inspiration we draw from other people when we see things like courage and honesty and virtue and selflessness, like, that's the point, right? So we moved here to Florida, and it's been great in every way. The kids are very happy, my wife's very happy, I'm happy in my job. And people are like, people ask me all sorts of questions about my job, and I usually don't really understand them because I just don't relate to my job that way. But what I like most about my job, the ability to manifest what I believe is right. That's what I like most about my job. And I, fortunately, have a boss who gets it, right? He's a boss. He's a boss who understands that there's nothing more important than individuals as human beings and their relationship, their expression of liberty, their ability to tap into that. A man that understands that the human beings and liberty are inseparable, right? And it's all with our connection with God. It's one thing. It's one thing. It's all connected. And he understands that. He's got courage. Everyone's seen that on display, and that's what it took for him to do. I mean, can you imagine the kind of courage it took to have all these MDs and news, experts saying that, oh, you can't open schools, and people have to stay home, and why are young people having fun at the beach? That's not right. They shouldn't do that. To stare that down, to read the data, to reach a conclusion, to know that conclusion is right, and all of these Harvard MDs and PhDs are wrong, right? That takes courage, right? And he embodies that. That is who he is. He doesn't have to work to be that, He doesn't have to think, okay, I'm going to wake up today, I'm going to have courage. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. No, he doesn't have to do any of that, right? It is who he is. And that's a very special thing. It's a very special thing. Yeah. So that's why I'm here today, because I support him. I support him fully because of who he is. His qualities are quite special. There's no one else out there. Mr. Trump, I got to meet him during the Dr. Scott Atlas invited me up to the White House he invited me and Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and Dr. Martin Kulderoff and Dr. Cody, I'm blanking on Cody's last name right now. But he invited us to the White House. It was a great meeting. I got nothing against Mr. Trump, but there's no one right now who is running in this election who has the critical qualities that Governor DeSantis has. The integrity, the courage, the intelligence, and not only the book intelligence, right, but the human intelligence, right? To be able to understand when someone is telling you the truth and when they're selling you a bag of goods. Like Dr. Fauci, unfortunately, has been able to just snow so much of the American people for years, right? That takes not only book intelligence, but human intelligence. No one else has that, has the combination of those characteristics. The integrity, the courage, the awareness, the wisdom, right? To see not only what's viewable, but what is unseen and hidden. And a lot of that unseen stuff is what is pushing agendas, right? It's what's pushing some of the worst things that we've seen over the last few years, and has in fact pushed what we've seen historically for centuries in terms of some of, unfortunately, human beings' most heinous misdeeds. So that combination of characteristics, and finally I'll add just the amicability, right? The actual genuine interest in the betterment of other people, right? No one has to want other people to be better off, right? I mean, no one has to want that, but some people do, and he does. Like, that's his natural state, right? You watch him. My wife and I and our kids visited him, and Casey DeSantis. I think it was about a year and a half ago. And one of my favorite parts of that visit, I actually have never told the governor, was watching him play with his kids, right? That the love, that natural state, like that's who the man is, just that free flowing love and care about other people. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, right? It's a beautiful thing. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I support Governor DeSantis, and I think we're going to have him come up now. So, Governor, please come on up.
Very good. He hit all those notes, man. And remember, he met with Trump. I told you this at the beginning. Him and Jay Bhattacharya, they met with Trump. They told him to not listen to Fauci, and Trump said, "Thank you, have a nice day," and then did the opposite. You can't say Trump didn't know. You cannot.
Great to be back in New Hampshire. Good to see you all. Thank you. It's great to be here. It's great to bring one of our jewels of the state of Florida, our Surgeon General, Joseph Ladapo.
Ladapo is like 6'4", so look, DeSantis is almost 6 feet tall, so shut up about that stuff,
So
right?
one of the reasons I'm running for president is because I think we need accountability for how the federal government handled COVID-19. I think we need that in a big way.
Yes.
If you think about everything that kind of happened, I mean, it's a big deal, because if you look at the 21st century, the three biggest events for our society, I would argue, were 9/11 and the ensuing wars, the great financial crisis and the Great Recession, and then COVID-19. And of all those, COVID probably had the biggest impact on society writ large. There was nobody that wasn't affected by it in some way, and the federal government and what they did to drive policy had a really negative impact on a lot of people for no corresponding benefit. If you think about how the elites handled this, on almost every key inflection point, they got it wrong. They were wrong. They either were wrong or they lied about all the following: the origin of the virus, saying that it was from the Wuhan wet market when it was from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, lying about gain of function research, lockdowns, saying that lockdowns could stop the spread of COVID, cloth mask efficacy. I mean, there was a time when if you didn't wear a cloth mask outside, they said you were somehow a bad person. And yet there was no clinical trial that ever showed that just a piece of cloth could stop a respiratory virus. They were wrong about school closures. They were wrong about the impact that those policies would have on young people. There was these epidemiologists saying, oh, these kids are resilient. Who cares if they're out of school, right? No, it was a big deal. So they were wrong about that. They were wrong about outdoor transmission. I was getting hammered because we had beaches open in Florida. Well, guess what? You're probably not getting a respiratory virus out on a beach. That's not typically how it goes. It's usually indoors. So they were wrong about that. They were wrong about healthy quarantines. It used to be you have someone, especially like a really significant, it's like an Ebola. If someone's got Ebola, you quarantine the sick person, right? And you keep them out from helping. Well, they decided that healthy people should be quarantined, and that had never been done before. And you had schools, and Joe and I, the CDC pushed this, Joe and I rejected it. But they would say if one kid got positive for COVID, then like anyone in the class, even if they were healthy, had to go home and isolate for 2 weeks. It was terrible for families and everything. So we rejected that. So they were wrong about that. They were wrong about the efficacy of mRNA COVID shots. Remember, they said if you take it, you will not get COVID. That was wrong. People still got infected. They were also wrong about side effects. They said there were no side effects. First of all, it had not been studied enough, but you look at any pharmaceutical commercial that's on, what is it? It's the 30-second commercial. Like the first 15 seconds, 20 seconds is like, usually like a couple, oh, it's so great. I have this drug and now I'm doing all this stuff. And then the last 10 or 15 seconds cuts to, you could have a stroke, you could die, and it lists all the possible side effects. So you're telling me like this new mRNA shot emergency use that you could definitively say there was no impact, and obviously we've seen myocarditis, we've seen all these other things. So they've been wrong, they have lied about all these things, and what's been the damage? Well, the damage is, you got places like California, a lot of kids out of school, and some of these places, they didn't have access to school for over a year. That's gonna have a generational impact on our society. You look at the mental health, you look at all the issues that drove. I mean, one of the things I did in Florida early on was I told our state universities, you are not isolating our college students. Because in some parts, like in the Northeast, they were doing it where they literally are isolating healthy college students in their dorm rooms. That drove more mental health problems. And I said, they're gonna go out and they're gonna go to parties, they're gonna intermingle. You know what? A lot of them may get COVID. And it'll cycle through, and then they'll go on with their lives. And not one person was even admitted to the hospital in the college age in Florida, even though they were out living normally. So that did damage in different parts of the country. And then to just have these people constantly telling you things that are not true. And it's one thing if you make a bad judgment call, but it's another thing when the data is clear and you refuse to reverse course. When they're telling us a year into this that cloth masks can stop the spread. The CDC director under Trump at one point said, I think held a message, if we do this for 6 weeks, the pandemic will be over. That was false. And then clearly you see more and more of that as time went on. I remember, Joe, we did an event. This is 2021. We were promoting a physician's bill of rights. Or physician First Amendment protection, because what they were doing in states like California, if you dissented from the COVID orthodoxy, they were threatening to take away your medical license. So it was like you had to, and first of all, that's just not the way you got to go evidence-based. What the evidence tells you may not be what the majority of the orthodoxy says. Orthodoxy is often wrong. So we were proposing legislation, which has now been enacted, that protects the physician's right in those situations. So for example, at this time, advocate for a physician to tell like a 15-year-old male, don't take the mRNA shot. That is what the evidence was suggesting. That was not what the establishment, entrenched medical establishment was saying. So physician that did the right thing shouldn't be punished. So we did that. And I remember Joe stood up and he just said, you know, we've got to speak the truth. He pulled out a crumpled mask from his pocket. He said, you know, there's not a lot of these in Florida anymore, but he's like, this will not save your life. They are telling you this will save your life. Like, it's not true. What they're telling you is not true. And no one in his position with a medical degree would have been willing to say that at that time under those circumstances. So here's the thing. You can't have elites in society perform this poorly, this consistently, and then there not be any accountability for it. You know why? Because first of all, it's just not right not to have accountability. But second of all, if there's not accountability, they are going to try to do this again. They think that this is somehow good, all this stuff, and we can't do that. So we're going to bring accountability. Fauci, CDC, NIH, FDA, all of this, you're going to see major overhaul. And we're going to do a lot of different things right off the bat that this is going to change the way the federal government's going to be able to approach anything like this in the future. In Florida, even though we were the free state of Florida, I made the legislature come in, or I asked them to come in and do protections to reduce the governor's power and the local government's power for future instances of this. Even though I was using the power to liberate people from local restrictions, we still did not want to have a situation where a governor or local governments. So we did that. And I think you need similar protections
Thank you
now
for that.
federally. You should not be able to have.
Thank you, Governor. That was us that protested and pushed you to do that. Thank you.
You should never be in a situation where the federal government is issuing an administrative edict through an agency like OSHA saying you either get an mRNA COVID jab that's under experimental or it's under emergency use, or you don't have a right to put food on your table for your family. Tell nurses that they have to do a jab or they would lose their job as nurses. And oh, by the way, not only was that not scientifically justifiable, they were still forcing people who had recovered from COVID and had natural immunity to take, when there was no evidence to say that was something that was good. And that's another thing. They totally refused to recognize immunity through prior infection. And they said it, and the reason why they didn't do it is because they said, listen, if we say that there's immunity through prior infection, then we don't have the justification to restrict somebody. Because if you do that, you should be able to go out, and they did not want to be in a situation where people could make their own decisions. So we can't let that federal government ever do anything like that ever again. So we got to go in and kneecap that.
Kneecap it, baby. Kneecap it. Boom. Kneecap it. That means put it out of commission.
I think of somebody like Fauci, and Fauci, part of it is he had been there for like 30 years. I mean, how long had he been there?
Since
He'd been there since the
1984.
80s.
84.
We need term limits for bureaucrats.
Yeah, there we go. Let's go. Go all the way, brother. All the way. For congressmen, Senate, all of them.
The other thing I learned, so look, when I became governor prior to COVID, if you'd asked me about federal agencies, obviously I would have had a negative opinion of IRS and education and all those, that a conservative would. I would have said that the CDC is respected, right? I would have said NIH is good, FDA. FDA maybe some problems, but it just more for bureaucracy, right? I would have thought, I would have viewed him as credible, let's just put it that way. And then having done this, to see the nonsense that those agencies were spewing, to see how it all works behind the scenes, to see the ability of NIH and these people to control what's done because of their grant power, this whole thing is a total medical swamp right now, and it needs to be drained. It needs to be drained in a big way. So,
drain the swamp.
And I don't know how this happens, but these the bureaucrats in FDA, NIH, some of these agencies, they can get like patents and royalties and all this stuff. So you have a situation where I think between 2009 and 21, there was like $380 million paid out to federal bureaucrats in these agencies with these royalties. So you're going to regulate pharma and then you're getting royalties from pharma? It doesn't make sense. It's a nasty revolving door. We really need to break that up. You should not be able to go from FDA to pharma and back to the FDA. That is not a good thing for our country.
Yep. That's what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been saying for a while.
And you also need to, I mean, what CDC did, and Joe would speak out against it. They would put out these studies to justify whatever the narrative was, but they weren't clinical trials. They really weren't even rigorous. They were kind of observational or even anecdotal studies. I mean, I remember one, they said, well, so you gotta close barbershops because, there was a lady who got her hair done and then she infected 2 other people after being in the barbershop. So therefore it's a fault of the barber. And I'm just thinking like no rigor, no anything. But what would happen, they'd put something out that was very flimsy that people could pick apart, but the media would take it and then they would run with it, and it was a churn and it created narrative. Same thing with the masking and all this other stuff. So you saw that, and it's like, that's your tax dollars going to producing what basically amounted to the scientific version of just slop. Like none of this stuff. If he had tried to pass off this stuff at Harvard Medical School, he would have failed the course because of doing it. It was so pathetic, and it was so obviously trying to follow a narrative rather than try to follow the evidence that you need a total overhaul of the CDC. I mean, it needs to be cleaned out entirely.
Put Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in charge of it. He'll take care of that.
And we also just need to be honest about, if you look at the problems we have now with our economy, high prices, high interest rates, reduced standard of living, a home market that's, I think really in problematic shape given how expensive it is to buy a home, but how people are locked into their mortgages because the rates have gone up so much. All of that began with COVID and the COVID lockdowns and Congress doing the CARES Act. They borrowed and printed and spent $2.2 trillion in March of 2020, another $2 trillion in December of 2020. And that was under Trump. Then Biden came in and he did $2 trillion in March of 2020. So just in that year, you had $6 trillion added to the debt, and that was printed and everything. So when that happens, you are going to see inflation. I mean, there's just no way. If you could do that with no consequences, why not do 12 trillion or 20? I mean, geez, if all you have to do is print. So you knew that this was going to happen. And then the Fed, they expanded the money supply. They said inflation was going to be transitory. It took off, so they got behind it. So they've hiked interest rates, and they may be done hiking now. But I mean, this has had a huge impact on people. It's been very destructive what they've done, and that's because they weren't doing the job from the beginning. So that's the root of it. It was rooted in people like Fauci and all these other people sowing fear and hysteria throughout the country. What they would give to all the governors, they would give models for how much hospitalized patients were going to be and the increase because of COVID. And they were passing out models to say, if you don't do anything major, that you would have like 3 times, 4 times, 5 times as many COVID patients as you even had available hospital beds in a given state. Now, if you think about it, if that did happen, that means people are just on the street. You'd have to build field hospitals. I mean, it would be really, really bad thing. Problem is, it was totally false. It was not what happened. It didn't happen in any place in the world. And yet, every single model they were producing was showing this, and that drove a lot of the bad policy on the fiscal and regulatory. So here we are, and a lot of Americans are hurting because of the decisions that go back to March of 2020 and carried on. And there's a lot of people that say somehow that they did everything right and it was so great and all this other stuff. That's just not true. Okay, that is not true. We know the federal government muffed this in many different ways, and we need a reckoning. And we are going to bring a reckoning for this.
The only guy saying this. The only one. Nobody else is talking about this.
Well, we're happy. Both Joe and I are happy to take some questions if anybody has any questions about any of these issues. Yep. Oh, there you go.
Is it on? That's okay. So, Governor, it's really good to see you again. I'm Representative Edwards. I do a lot with our DHHS. very recently, I've looked at our website, and it says pretty clearly that the DHHS recommendation is that otherwise healthy children, even those with natural immunity, should be getting the COVID jab. And it doesn't say, you know, consult your physician or anything. It just says you should go get it.
Absolutely
and I'm just curious
not.
what, maybe this is for your Surgeon General, but I'm just curious what you're doing in Florida for otherwise healthy kids who may have had natural immunity. What's the recommendation?
Well, you know, let's think about this here. We have a new technology, right? News keeps coming up, and I don't remember the last piece of news that was good about it in terms of its safety. We've got kids that, you know, thank God, thanks to the Lord, by and large, almost entirely are unaffected in a serious way. You know, it's easy to make that recommendation, right? You shouldn't be putting experimental stuff in healthy kids.
How about that? Who else is talking about this? Just insane, man.
I know I went to Harvard for medical school, and it seems like that might require more advanced analysis.
No,
seriously.
I love this
come
guy.
on, you know.
But Joe was the first Surgeon General in America to recommend against kids getting the COVID
Yes,
jab.
he was. He said nobody should take it.
And
yeah.
And you know, when they approved for emergency use 6-month-old babies, you know, he showed me the data. There just wasn't data to justify that. And so it's like, okay, why are we doing this? What is the, because, you know, if you did rigorous study and trials and somehow is going to save lives with no negative impact, then you prove it, and you can argue for that. But that wasn't there. It was totally absent. And yet they're doing it, and you have pediatricians that are pushing it on this. But I tell you, parents are by and large not doing it. If you look at the uptake, I mean, it is very, very low amongst kids because there hasn't been a demonstrated benefit. So Joe was the first one to say no. When they approved it for the 6-month-old babies, he instructed the Department of Health not to be involved in administering that. In that, so his agency didn't take any part in it with that. And then he looked at the side effects in Florida for this, and the first study he did showed for males, what was it, 18 to 39? 18 to 39, you definitely saw a statistically significant increase in myocarditis. And that's not the only place to show that. I think that's been shown pretty much anywhere. So, and especially if somebody has already recovered from COVID. I mean, at that point, there's certainly no basis. And so, you know, on all this stuff, it's you have to show a benefit. And if you don't show the benefit, really, then the discussion is over. Why would you put something in somebody if there's no clear benefit that's established? And then if there's a benefit, then you get into what are the potential drawbacks of it. But if there's not a benefit proven, then right then and there, that should be. So that was Joe's recommendation. I think it was the right one, reading the data and reading it. And it's amazing how flimsy some of these studies are that they'll do. Like when they don't want to approve something, they will require like War and Peace be submitted, you know, for this. But when they want to approve something, 6 mice go in, get out, and they're fine with emergency use. That's not the way this should run.
It's true. 6 mice. It's all right. How can you say he's not funny? He's freaking hilarious. You have to be smart to think DeSantis is funny, though.
Another vaccine for respiratory syncytial virus, the RSV vaccine. We saw in the COVID vaccine for children that children in the subject group who got the vaccine were more likely to get RSV, and they approved that anyway. And then, since the RSV is so dangerous and the COVID vaccine makes you more susceptible to it, we're going to have an RSV vaccine. However, in the clinical trials, GSK, GlaxoSmithKline,
Oh, we have an expert in the audience.
approval goes between CDC and FDA. And so you have a vaccine they're giving to pregnant mothers.
You
And
should ask Ladapo
a 6-year-old, and I know
about what he said to Trump.
being a pregnant mother, how they push the
Trump
vaccine
told him to, no, have a nice day.
and how they lie and tell you your 1-day-old baby needs a Hep B vaccine because they tell you, I say, why? And they say, oh, you can get, the baby can get hepatitis in the hospital from a diaper change, and that's a lie. There's no study showing any baby in a daycare setting getting Hep B. You get it from an infected mother, and I was not. So I know how they lie and how they push. What are you doing in Florida to save these pregnant mothers from being injected with this poison that has them more likely to have preterm birth and lose their baby?
Joe, you want to take?
That's the kind of
RSV
person
one?
that will vote for Kennedy. That's the kind of person who will vote for Kennedy if Trump's the nominee. There are a lot
Honestly,
of them.
it's. I mean, we laugh, but it's actually a very sad situation, and the sad situation is really the scientific, the mental capture of so much of the scientific community. You know, you hear what this young woman has shared, and it's like most people probably haven't heard this, but factually, it's completely correct. So there was a signal for increased premature births in the trial that Pfizer did, and very much in the trial that GlaxoSmithKline did, and they abandoned the product. The same signal was present in Pfizer's trial, and there were other concerning findings. I think the number of kids that I don't recall exactly, but at least in GlaxoSmithKline, I think literally, sadly, more children died in the treatment arm, in the vaccine arm. And you know what she's saying actually relates to what the governor was saying, which is that we really need an overhaul. So the way most doctors think about medications is from a neutral perspective, or they should, in that, you know, medication is another therapeutic option, and if the data are good, great. And if the data aren't good, then, you know, then no thanks, and that's not the right decision. And unfortunately, the neutral position with vaccines by many scientists is that they're great. And if the data don't look all that good, it's still probably okay. Rather than if the data don't look good, the data don't look good. And I listened to the meeting where this particular RSV vaccine was approved, and at least one of the members of the FDA's committee, I think, actually gave it a thumbs down and was concerned enough. Maybe a couple of them were, but most of them were so inclined to approve that data wasn't shifting their position. So in Florida, we don't play that game. I mean, everyone else plays that game, and you can be sure you will always get it straight from us, right? If the data look good, we'll say that, and if the data don't look good, we'll say that too, even if people don't want to hear it. And that's the approach that we've taken, including with this new RSV vaccine. And come on, I mean, the other thing is, why is the FDA the marketing arm for pharma? They have billions of dollars.
Exactly.
If the studies aren't good enough, make them do more. They can afford it. They're not paupers.
Exactly. Boom. Hitting it on the nail. Yeah, exactly.
I remember, I think Joe can correct me, but I think it was when the ACIP committee, is that what they call it? They were talking about approving the mRNA COVID jab for youth, for young people. It may have been the 6 to 12, maybe it was 6 months to 6, somewhere in there. And you know, people were raising concerns about, well, we don't know this, we don't know that. And one of the guys there was basically said something to the effect of, well, you know, we're never going to know for sure unless we start giving this to people. And I'm just thinking to myself, what?
Unbelievable.
Are we just guinea pigs? I mean, give me a break.
Yep.
And so that's some of the thinking, I think, that you have, which is not good thinking. In Florida, we are the only state. We currently have a statewide grand jury impaneled.
Yep.
It's been impaneled, I think, since probably the winter.
December.
December
you impaneled it.
And it's looking at
coming back
mRNA shots,
December.
misrepresentations, harms, all this other stuff based on how it was rolled out and the representations. And it's secret, so I don't know what's happened, but I know that there have been people that have testified, experts, people that have had problems with some of it and whatnot. So that is ongoing, and there may be a report or something like that pretty soon. Yes.
Coming in December. Stay tuned, guys. Stay tuned.
Well, but that is exactly how people for generations were instructed not to handle pandemics. If you look at the preparedness guides that were done, there's a great article out of Johns Hopkins that was probably about 15 years ago, where you have the guy that eradicated smallpox led this article, and he's like, when something like that happens, the worst thing you can do is get everyone scared and fearful. It's like, you got to remain calm. You got to be very matter of fact. You'll provide people the information and you can make recommendations, but you should not try to scare people and let people make decisions. And they went through all the things that were eventually done with the federal government and others, and they looked at all of them. They're like, look, it's not clear any of these measures even work. Closing a school, like, okay, you do that for a week or two. There's no evidence you could just do that for a year. Like, no one ever thought that was something that was good. Closing this, doing that. Cloth masks, they always said it didn't work. Then all of a sudden, so that I think was some of the worst part of this, was doing the fear. I mean, I remember Trump's Surgeon General went out late March of 2020 saying this is like going to be 10 Pearl Harbors. This is all. I mean, like.
Oh God,
like
Jerome Adams.
He's still doing
the worst.
I know. But
He's
I'm just
still
thinking to
doing
myself,
it.
Like,
Yeah.
First of all, like, that is not, what you say. Also, the way they did the data, they basically said if you have a positive test within 30 days of death, that counts as a COVID death. Now, I'm not sitting here telling you saying COVID wasn't deadly for a lot of people. It was, but we had instances where someone would get in a motorcycle accident, they were positive for COVID,
Yep.
and so then they were counted as a COVID death. Well,
Yep.
that's not right. So that's making it, you're enhancing the mortality rate artificially. So you should just do it accurately and be accurate with people, and they didn't do that. So I think it's a big problem. And one of the things, basically what I said when we did our big break with the Fauci and all that early in COVID, I said, we've got to choose facts over fear. Facts over fear. That's what it's got to be. Yeah. Well, I'll do you in a sec. Let me get him. Then
I see Jason Osborne and Melissa Blazek. Hopefully Melissa will jump on the stream after this is over.
Defund the UN. I mean, are you kidding me? What a farce. No, but seriously, I mean, look, I have a belief that we, the American people, are sovereign. We don't give up sovereignty to international organizations, and that's a long-held view. Your participation in something like the UN, if it's short of giving up sovereignty, you still have to ask the question of what's it actually doing? The UN is basically a hotbed for anti-Semitism, anti-Israel. It's some of the worst elements in the world to get together. They couldn't even bring themselves to condemn Hamas massacring all those Israeli civilians. I mean, give me a break. And now the head of the UN says that there should be a ceasefire. Like, wait a minute. Like, they can attack you, then you have a seat, and you're not allowed to fight back and the problem. And then they're basically saying that somehow this was Israel's fault with all this. Just for the record, Gaza has not been occupied, quote unquote, since 2006. Israel pulled out. They not only pulled out, they took every Israeli citizen and forced them to leave Gaza.
Big mistake, by the way.
So it was basically
Big
cleansing
mistake.
Gaza of any Israelis. And the Israeli government did that forcibly. That was a traumatic experience. So they had an opportunity to govern themselves, and they could have done a lot. It's a nice piece of land. And instead, they elected Hamas, because ultimately what drives that society is hatred of Jews and hatred of Israel, and they want to wipe Israel off the map. So to say that somehow it's Israel's fault is just ridiculous. So what I see from the UN, I think it's a total farce. I think it's just disgusting to see some of these countries acting the way they're doing. Yes, I don't think we should be funding it. I mean, and there's been a lot of money through the UN that's gone to Gaza, which Hamas takes. So the UN has funded Hamas a lot. So blame Israel. You can blame the UN more than you can blame Israel for some of that. The other thing is the World Health Organization.
Boo!
They are proposing, and Biden wants to do, they call it a pandemic, global pandemic treaty. It's really a lockdown treaty.
Yep.
So I can tell you this, if they try to push the WHO treaty on the United States when I become president, my response will be this: go ahead, make my day, because I will take that treaty and I will throw it in the trash can where it belongs.
Cowboy boot them right in the ass. That's where you need a man. Trump doesn't stand up to those guys. He ain't stand up to Fauci. And Fauci's about as short as Jack Pogo Stick.
He didn't want to go do anesthesia because it was hours of boredom, injury, by moments of panic. And in both situations, you make bad choices. So that's an intentional thing on their part. And we still see the fear because we focus for a long time.
Oh, you hear that New Hampshire accent right there. New Hampshire. Got to get to Santa Harbor.
And we focus still on this disease that is nuanced.
What's up, Melissa Blazik? I see you.
Basically the same. And yet we lived our lives, had our society with influenza, with none of this stuff. But I want to move on to a different topic because I think there's something, I forgot the words now that you used, but there's something that you said that this all started in 2000, in March of 2020, and having to do with inflation and money. And it's more serious by far than COVID ever was, is the destruction of our money, the stealing of our value with its fake money.
Exactly.
In the 1930s, accelerated under Nixon.
He's right.
And it's stealing money.
He's right. He's absolutely right.
Stealing our food. There's a great article about how inflation moves the food chain from healthy food, steaks, eggs, etc.,
Yes, he's absolutely right. He's talking about inflation and how it's basically thievery.
cups of kale or a quarter of a breast of chicken. You know,
It's a form of taxation.
thing of money and the fear that's produced. Oh, inflation only affects the wealthy, etc., etc.
It's a tax on the poor. Inflation's a tax on the poor.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, I think it's great. I think you're right. I mean, I think if you look just in, so I mentioned the three big events, 21st century, 9/11 and the wars, financial crisis and aftermath. What did they start doing after the financial crisis? Quantitative easing.
Printing money.
Basically, they said it was emergency to just print a bunch of money, flood the financial system so you didn't have a major crash like 1929. And I don't know whether that was true, but that was the justification. But they said at the time, this is an extraordinary measure. This is not normal. And then that became the norm to have QE all the way up until we had COVID. And when you're doing that type, the value goes to more wealthy people that have the assets that get inflated. Very difficult for blue collar people on fixed incomes. You're not doing better as a result of that. So I think the Federal Reserve has been a big problem with this. They should not have authority to micromanage our economy. Their goal should be to make sure our currency holds value and that we have a stable currency. They've gone so far beyond that with a lot of what we're doing. And I think that goes back to the root of a lot of the problems. Okay, I had the guy back there. Yes.
Last question, ladies and gentlemen. This is our last question.
I'll do a couple more.
He'll take questions all day long, man.
Illegally, might I add. Yes. No, I agree with you. I think it's, that's why I said prior to COVID, my view of the NIH, I mean, I thought I had a high opinion of it. I didn't necessarily know what was going on behind the scenes because they have done good work in the past. But then seeing how it works, you're right, the corruption is unbelievable. And I often wondered, okay, here I'm just a governor, right? I'm reading this data. You know, someone like Fauci, he understands like a molecule and all that, but I don't, that's not my cup of tea.
I'm not sure
but
he
I can
understands
read
molecules.
data. Anyone can read the data. The data was very clear, right, on a lot of this stuff. And yet, you didn't have people coming. He was like the first Surgeon General in the country that was willing to follow the data. When I was doing all this early in COVID, I had nobody that would stand with me, and I'd have doctors tell me behind the scenes, you're right, for them speaking out was like career suicide. If they criticized Fauci, they would not be eligible for grants and all this. That is not the way this works. That is abusing power. So one of the things I think you need to do, well, you need a big overhaul, clean house, all that. But these grants should be decentralized. It should not be a cabal of people that have that much power because they can use the ability to dispense money to change and shape behavior. And that's not what you want. I mean, you want it to where meritorious projects are the ones that are doing it, and that scientists and physicians are free to speak out about the evidence as they see it. And that's not what's been happening. So yes, we're going to do, so there's not going to be a Fauci or a Collins who's going to have a hammerlock on this money. It should go, there should be, 14 or 15 regions around the country where we can do it and have that done, I think, in a more merit-based way, because right now I just don't think the incentives are good. Okay, I'll do a couple more. Yes.
Oh, he's still going, man.
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, look, I think that's finally someone is sensible by saying, so Israel is a strong ally. I think they have every right to defend themselves. I think they have every right to end the threat by Hamas entirely. And I think we should, it's not necessarily we'll be fighting, but I think we should provide support so that they can do it like we've done historically. But I also think as you're doing that, just because Israel needs support, that doesn't mean that we can sit there and close our eyes and pretend that this country is not going bankrupt. And so what the House is doing is saying, yeah, we'll stand with Israel, but what we give them, we're going to take, and we're going to cut from this bloated bureaucracy. And we're not just going to keep doing the same old stuff. So I support what they're doing. They're right, 100%. Okay. Yep. What part? Fort Myers Beach. The question, yeah, so great question. The question's 87,000 IRS agents. Let's just put it this way. When I'm president, they'll be on life support because we're going to get rid of the 87,000 IRS agents. But so he mentions Fort Myers Beach, so we had a Category 5 hurricane last year in Florida, Hurricane Ian, and Fort Myers Beach was kind of ground zero for it. I mean, just really, really significant damage. And this just kind of shows about, okay, obviously you want someone to elect someone that you agree with on policy, and you have to have a good vision. And we do that, and I think we'll show that, or we have shown it, we'll continue to show it. But, there's going to be things that happen over the next 4 or 8 years that we're not even thinking about. I mean, if we were here in 2015, going into the 2016 cycle, no one would have been talking about a pandemic. It just wasn't on anybody's mind. Yeah, we ended up having it, and that's changed so much in our country, both politically and economically and socially. So there's going to be things happen. So the question is, what kind of a leader are you? So an example, we had the hurricane there. It knocked out 2 of the bridges going to the barrier islands. So the people couldn't get to the barrier islands, Sanibel and Pine Island. And they weren't state bridges, they were local roads. And the local folks were saying, hey, it's going to be 6 months before you guys can get back and before the bridges can do. So they came to me and they said, hey, Governor, can you help us? I'm like, yeah, I'll help you. I mean, look, and like a lot of governors may not have wanted to do that because the minute you take ownership of it, if it doesn't go well, you're going to get blamed. If it's just not your deal, you can say, oh, isn't it so bad? The locals aren't helping you on this. No, you got to lead. So we pick it up. So I got my guys together. I said, listen, I don't want to hear about any bureaucracy. I don't want to hear about any red tape. I just want to get it done. Don't make any excuses. And so instead of taking 6 months, we were able to get people back in their homes and rebuild the bridges in a matter of days. And that was something that people saw as action. We just had with the Hamas attacks. I mean, I knew in Florida this was going to be a big deal because we have a good relationship with Israel. We've got a lot of our citizens that go back and forth. And so I knew we may have to do something. I was surprised, though, that the people, the Americans that were trying to get out of there were basically abandoned by the federal government. The State Department wasn't helping, the embassy, they were getting no support at all. So I'm like, all right. So I did an executive order, and I scrambled planes, and we sent planes to Israel, and we rescued Americans and brought them back to the state of Florida. And the thing about it was, my wife and I, we met the first plane load that came, 271 passengers, but 91 children. You know, these are very young children coming down. Some of them had their family dogs with them, all this stuff. And it's like, you know, you got to step up and you got to lead. You got to get the job done when things like that happen. So I think that you can be confident that when there are things that happen in the next 4 to 8 years, that are going to require leadership and sound judgment, that I'm the guy that's going to be able to deliver that because we've done it before. So thanks, everybody. God bless.
All right. There he is. Okay. And there's Dr. Joe Ladapo, Ron DeSantis in New Hampshire, a state that I've been going to since I was a kid. And I saw Melissa Blazek up there. I sent her a message of Melissa, if you want to jump on the stream, yeah, go ahead. But of course, you're probably there hanging out with the governor. And Governor DeSantis will be headed back to Florida. We got a special session next week. Going to be dealing with some sanctions on Iran or some things we can do on Iran here in Florida. Then there's also some other things to do. But, you know, one of the biggest things that people say is, oh, well, isn't all this COVID stuff, isn't it time to move on past this? Isn't it time to forget about this and move on? Aren't there other things that people are more concerned about? Well, there's a fundamental misunderstanding here of what COVID and what they did really meant and its connection to all that's going on. That one man who was talking about inflation and how it's basically thievery, he's absolutely right. And where did this inflation come from? The inflation came from shutting down the country and telling people not to work. Oh, if you were part of the laptop class who pops Adderall and sits on your computer all day, oh yeah, you were fine. Or if you work for the government or something like that, you didn't miss a day of work. And those guys were all like, oh yeah, why don't you just do this? Well, you know, some of us, we don't make our money that way. We have to leave the house. We have businesses. We have to go out. And what they did to the beauty industry, what they did to calling people not essential and all that crap, that can't happen again. Okay, that is unacceptable. But the fact that the government printed money under Trump and all this happened under Trump, okay, and that's what drove the inflation that we're seeing today. So DeSantis understands that this was the wellspring of all the bad things that were happening today is when they shut down the country. And it's not that people don't want to move on. It's not, if you want to talk about being stuck in the past, let's talk about it. Trump, all he pisses and moans about is the 2020 election, and it was stolen from him, and oh man, they didn't do what I wanted, and unless you about 2020 election and you think it was stolen, then you are a rhino. and you should be run out of the party and run out of town and, and this kind of crap. Okay, so if you want to talk about being stuck in the past, tell Trump to get over it, okay? Even though we know the election wasn't stolen now because all his people say as much. But this is not about being stuck in the past. This is about moving on. And in order to move on, we need to hold people accountable, okay? It's like telling a family that had a family member murdered by somebody that they just need to get over it. And you just need to forgive them and move on. How condescending can you possibly be? There were people that were hurt by this vaccine. There were people whose life savings were taken away because of this, okay? And we want to move on. But you can't just pretend it never happened and move on. In order to move on, you have to hold people responsible, the perpetrators of what they did to us, okay? Dr. Fauci and these guys that lied to us, his boss Francis Collins that DeSantis brought up, these guys and their cartel that they've been running, the fact that you've got people working in these regulatory agencies who benefit financially from the products that they're supposed to regulate. And this is why everybody needs to read this book by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., The Real Anthony Fauci. Bill Gates, Big Pharma, and the Global War on Democracy and Public Health. Okay? And in this, you learn a lot of things that you just cannot believe that they've been getting away with this, with faulty tests that they did or faulty trials with hydroxychloroquine that people died from. The fact that Trump let Fauci use his bully pulpit to push remdesivir. The way that they silenced anybody that would dare question their vaccine ideology, or that they would be stripping medical licenses from, and stuff like that. And then of course to read Dr. Ladapo's book. But to understand this, you have to. There needs to be accountability. And now I'm glad that DeSantis brought up the grand jury that he has in Florida. We have a tool in Florida called a statewide grand jury, where the governor can tell the Supreme Court that, hey, we want to impanel a grand jury, which is just regular people. And for a year, that grand jury meets regularly and they come back with a report. That report on the Pfizer and the pharmaceutical companies and lies that they told and things like that, that will be coming in December. It's 12 months ago, 11 months ago that he impaneled that, and it's coming back next month. That's going to be huge, okay? It's going to be a damning report, and it'll be interesting to see what DeSantis does to act on that. But look, the people that want to move forward and move past COVID, they need to understand that we can't do that unless there's accountability. Just like a family that had a family member, a crime committed against them or was murdered or something, they can't, number one, it's not your damn business to tell that family they need to move on. It's like telling the victims, families of the victims of a school shooting, that they should just get over it and move on with their life. When I hear people say, oh, can't we just move past COVID? That's basically what it sounds like to me. It's like telling the parent of a Parkland child that they should just move on and get over it without any justice or without anything happening. That's what it sounds like, and it's pretty damn condescending. Okay? In order to move past things, there's got to be a level of accountability. And then also to make sure that this never happens again. And then also to show that these, what happened in 2020 is what has driven all these problems, has driven us to where we are today. With inflation, which that man was absolutely right. It is a tax. And DeSantis said it, it's a tax on the poor. It's built because it just makes everything more expensive. And it's like a tax that you can't do little tricks to avoid or anything. It's just everything, food, everything is more expensive. Fees are going up. Homeowners association fees, everything, everything is going up and up and up, and cost of living. And then that expendable income that you have to use to on your children, to go on vacations, to enjoy your life, stuff like that. And God, some people just freaking enjoy your life, okay? Some people sit on Twitter all freaking day and night, just, and I used to do it a lot. I used to be in it like almost like it's almost like a slot machine sometimes, like 24/7. You're just like, what did they say? What? Oh my goodness, what did people say? And people on Twitter, some people just take themselves too damn seriously. Okay, really. But what Ladapo said at the beginning, why I like him so much, is he is talking about the human elements. There's a great dance song by Fred again. It's called "We Lost Dancing," and it talks about how we lost dancing. We lost everything. We lost in 2020. They tried to take away everything that made us human. That's why going out and dancing and having fun, going out on Halloween and dressing up, you got party poopers that are like, oh, Halloween is evil. Please. Okay? What is evil is to deny people their humanity. That is what's evil. And that's what Ladapo understands. And that is the thing that we have to grasp. It's really, what makes us human? Our socialization, our ability to enjoy things and to have senses. And God gave us all this world as a preview of what heaven is going to be like. It's an imperfect world, and we're spiritual beings, okay? And this is really just what it comes to. Communism and Fauciism and these guys, they don't believe in God. Fauci doesn't believe in God. Okay, they are godless. Okay, so when you are godless, you begin to see human beings as just industrious animals. Okay, Bill Gates is godless. Okay, and I'm not getting into all the little nitty gritty. And then the people go, oh well, he was born into a Catholic family. No, you're not born into believing in God. You're not born into Christianity either, okay? This idea that you were christened when you were like 6 months old means that you're good to go or something. It's silly. You're not born into believing in God, okay? And by the way, we're not all God's children. That's a choice if you want to be God's child. When people go, oh, we're all God's children. No, that's a choice, dude, okay? You can choose that. But we are all spiritual beings. And what was happening with the lockdowns is you had people who are godless who were basically, they treat people as industrious animals and things that need to be controlled. That's why they're into population control, because they basically see you as no more than a cat or a dog. And I love my sweet cats and dogs. But we need to control the human population, and never mind that when you abort somebody, or when people can't have children because of maybe something they put in their body that you said was safe, but you knew it wasn't, that they might be not having a baby, and that baby might grow up to create a new technology that reduces pollutants in the atmosphere by like 50%. They remove the human element, okay? The fact that every human life has intrinsic value, and we have a human desire, or a human desire is not the right word, but a need to socialize, and this is what they were trying to take away from us. All right, and that DeSantis has a fundamental understanding of this. And read his book, The Courage to Be Free: Florida's Blueprint for America's Revival. All right, these are very important books to read to understand the philosophies of these guys. And I don't see this in Trump at all, in any way. I don't see there's Melissa. What's up?
Hello.
Hey, what's up, Melissa? I saw you in the front.
We are at a ski resort in Manchester, New Hampshire. That's where this event was. And I just walked outside, and hey.
What's up, Melissa? So this is State Representative Melissa Blazek. I've known her from back in 2020. You did Reopen New Hampshire. I was doing Reopen South Florida. What did you make? What did you think of the governor and Dr. Ladapo's presentation today?
I thought it was great. I really did. I had coffee with Dr. Ladapo before this event, and he told me that he's never done any political event before. This was his first political speech. I think he was a little nervous, but I thought he did great. What I find really interesting about the two of them is they're kind of a nice counterpoint to one another, right? Dr. Ladapo is very personable. He's kind of soft-spoken. He tells nice, sweet stories. I thought he made some really great points. DeSantis is very technical, very forceful, right? So I thought they were a great counterpoint to one another. This is exactly what I was hoping it would be.
They really are, and I like how they go back and forth on this. And DeSantis said something. I can't remember what it was, but he had me cracking up for a minute there. I don't remember what he said, but Ladapo, he was out there at UCLA. He's another Harvard graduate. And just got the call from DeSantis saying, "Hey, will you be my Surgeon General? Will you come out?" And he tells a story about his wife saying yes, and then coming out. Is this message resonating with New Hampshire voters?
I hope so. I will say this event, I've been to a bunch of town halls now, DeSantis town halls. This was the most amount of just brand new faces that I have seen in the crowd. Either people that I know from the medical freedom movement here in New Hampshire who have not attended a DeSantis event yet, or just people, I've just never not recognized as many faces as I did today. I think it brought out a whole new crowd. Interestingly enough, I think it brought out a lot of people who were going to vote for RFK, but now can vote in the Republican primary. So I think we're bringing out a new group of voters, right? In New Hampshire is an open primary system. So if you're an independent, a registered independent, you can vote in either the Republican or Democrat primary. So
wow.
Yeah. So I think that we're bringing in a lot of new voters here with an event like today.
Melissa, I commented on that. That was pretty cool that I saw there was some really intelligent questions in the audience, especially with that woman who was asking about the vaccines and their effect on children. And I was looking at her and I said, that's an RFK Jr., a Robert F. Kennedy Jr. voter right there. Who's considered DeSantis.
She's a very hardcore DeSantis supporter. That is Victoria Gullah, big person in the medical freedom movement here in New Hampshire. I've known her for a long time. But yes, there were certainly a lot. I heard from people that they were, otherwise have going to support RFK. They're here to check out Ron DeSantis. Certainly DeSantis is the only one even touching the subject on the Republican side, let alone devoting an entire town hall to it. I also really like this idea of doing town halls on very specific topics, because what actually ends up happening, if you're somebody who lives in one of these early states and you go to a lot of these things, what ends up happening is that the questions, if you just do a general town hall, the questions always end up being the same. They ask about guns, they ask about abortion, and they ask about the border. And it's like rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Having these very specific topics, I think, brings out more in-depth questions and create more moments.
I think so too. And I just see how people who still are supporting Trump, they get really upset about this. And that usually tells me that he's over the mark. But I can see why they get upset about this. But they're like, why don't we just move on? And then move on to other things? What do you say to people that are like, oh, why are we rehashing the past? As if Trump and his people or anybody talk about that.
If you ignore an atrocity, it occurs again. If you don't do anything to correct what created it. Now, I was trying to ask a question that I thought was going to create some headlines. Okay, now I did see DeSantis afterwards, and I told them, please start talking about this. But he needs to be discussing repealing the PrEP Act and repealing the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act. Those are the two things that set up what occurred during COVID. The PrEP Act in particular, that is the Public Readiness and Emergency Preparedness Act. And perhaps there were good intentions at the beginning, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And essentially it created such blanket immunity that hypothetically a doctor could have shot a patient in the head with COVID and had zero liability whatsoever. There's a reason why you could, the mother here whose child tried to commit suicide because of anxiety from mask use in schools. There's a reason why she couldn't sue the school board for imposing that mask mandate. The PrEP Act.
Wait a minute. Are you talking about the vaccine thing that Reagan signed in '84 or whatever?
That's the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act.
Okay.
And so, but I think both of them coupled together created what we saw with COVID and so many other issues on top of that. But no, the Public Readiness and Emergency Preparedness Act didn't just create blanket liability immunity for vaccines, but for anything related to the whatever disease is causing a pandemic. Okay. So you can't sue for a mask mandate if there were negative repercussions. Nothing. All in the name of, I mean, the intentions were a doctor should be able to, in a new disease, go out there and try to figure out what the treatment is, right? So they were trying to unshackle doctors, but the medical boards just shackled them down anyway. Basically put a gun to their head and said, if you do anything that the CDC says otherwise, then you're losing your license. But then we had the issues with the PrEP Act on top of that, making it so that there could never be any accountability for any COVID related policy.
Wow. I always wondered why it was so hard to sue or do anything about this. And I knew about the vaccine liability protection, which I'm sure was done with good intentions, but at the time they weren't using their imagination to see how this could be exploited by people with bad intentions.
Right.
So yeah, that's if you don't mind, I think DeSantis might be doing some appearances.
He's doing some media right now.
Oh, he's with media right now.
He is.
Go tell him Chris Nelson wants to talk to him and get him on the stream.
Hold on, I'm gonna mute you. It's very loud in there, so I'm gonna mute the mic and I'm gonna go talk to somebody to see if we can get him on this real quick.
See if we can get him on this real quick. That'd be awesome.
Okay.
All right. Oh, wow. Wouldn't it be cool to get Ron DeSantis on this stream? I mean, how cool. And, I just want to say that, ask, what do you think about, people that say that we should just move on and that we, because I say moving on would be.
Chris, they're playing your song. Can you hear
Are they
that?
playing We're Not Gonna Take It? We're not gonna take it. No, we ain't gonna take it. But how cool, Melissa. It would be so cool to get.
He laughed.
Oh, he laughed. I'm telling you, man. I should push it more to get the interview with DeSantis. I honestly can't believe I haven't interviewed with DeSantis, but I've asked him enough questions in order for it to basically be put together into an interview, and I love how he always takes my questions. But he took so many questions today from the audience, and he's doing so many interviews. I mean, do you think that right now, Melissa, we're really getting what we wanted with DeSantis really ramping it up, taking it to Trump?
Yes.
And talk on that for a minute.
I mean, if I'm being honest, this is what I was hoping for a while, but it does take people a while to hit their stride. Can you reverse camera on this? I don't know if you can. I'll just turn it around. Here's the bus. But somewhere in here, there's like the.
Cool.
Anyway.
And when it comes to moving on, you've got to do something about this. And do you think today with bringing Dr. Ladapo, do you think that is having a real impact on people? And that's something that he should do more
I like
of?
this idea of doing, like I said, subject matter town halls and bringing in other people to discuss. I mean, that's what he does when he's out in Florida. He does these amazing press conferences, and that's actually what sort of gave me the idea to do an event like this. Is that press conference they did in September on COVID, right? That's his version of political theater, right? He does these great press conferences. He brings in different people to talk about different aspects of the problem, right? And that's where he thrives. And after that, I called up the New Hampshire campaign guys and I was like, we should do this and we should bring in Ladapo. So I'm so glad it worked out and we did it.
Well, good job, Melissa. And somebody was saying we need to see Ladapo standing next to Fauci on a stage. This Fauci, this little shred. Ladapo is like 6'4", 6'5". And then somebody else is saying, just can you imagine Biden or Trump trying to field any of these questions off the cuff? After the fact, the people that came and saw this today and the people that asked questions, you might have heard them a little bit in the audience afterwards. What were they saying?
I actually didn't. I went backstage to talk to DeSantis for like a couple minutes, and then I got on this call. So really, I did not. But overall, from the little bits of chattering as I was just walking through the crowds, I mean, it was very, very positive. I also looked at the crowd. I noticed a lot of friends of mine who are, I think, currently pretty undecided. They're very libertarian types. But they showed up to this particular event because this is a subject that they're interested in specifically. And I was seeing a lot of positive impressions on their faces as the event was going on. So it's good.
Well, this is good. And just explain for a minute the importance of the Libertarian Party up there in New Hampshire. And then also, can some of these guys, if they're a registered libertarian, can they also vote in the Republican primary?
So we have smart libertarians in New Hampshire. They are not typically a part of the Libertarian Party. The Libertarian Party in New Hampshire is just as confused and small and insignificant as any place else. Smart libertarians in New Hampshire are typically registered Republicans or registered independents and vote Republican. And so, yeah, libertarians are very important in New Hampshire. The state has always leaned sort of in that direction, generally speaking, which is why it played host to the Free State Project, which is it was an idea conceived a couple decades ago, like 20 years ago, I want to say. I don't know specifically, but and the idea was if you concentrate libertarian power in one place, they can affect change. So I think the move was triggered about 15 years ago, and they all moved here. We have, I don't know, maybe it's, you're never sure because everyone, kind of considers themselves different things. But I think I've heard about 7,000 to 10,000 people who moved here with the Free State Project more and more every day. And they are libertarians, again, who pretty much vote Republican. And we have quite a few of them in the state house, including Jason Osborne, who's the House Majority Leader. He is a Free State Project member, or was. That's why he moved here. But yeah, it has sort of created just this general attitude of this is the state to go to if you sort of have libertarian leaning politics. And so, yeah, they are a big voting bloc. They tend to be very politically active versus like the average person, and very politically connected versus the average person. So, yeah.
What do you think of DeSantis hitting it off with Governor Sununu?
Well, Governor Sununu has been campaigning with pretty much, I think at this point he's done, I mean, I don't count like Perry Johnson, but he's been out with, most of the candidates of any kind of legitimacy. And
hey, Perry Johnson's going to pull this off, all right?
Oh, yeah. He spent the day with Governor DeSantis last week. They spent the whole day together. I was at one of the stops. I will say, Governor Sununu kind of, he was a good wingman with the cameras, but then really hung back at the events and let, DeSantis do his thing, and which was great. And yeah, that should be interesting. Governor Sununu is, he is very popular amongst independents, even some Democrats. He has mixed with Republicans. But he does represent sort of that anti-Trump, never Trumper sort of faction of the party. And right now, those people need to be corralled. They are way too split up and not consolidated enough. So a Sununu endorsement would help consolidate them.
Well, I think that would be great. And when I saw them passing the mic back and forth, and
Great. Sununu
I
sounded
thought
great.
it was great. I thought it was great. And Sununu being a guy who you didn't have a statewide mask mandate, did you?
Yes.
Oh, you did. Oh, but I see him, and he's really like, smiling big and looking at DeSantis and really looking at him as a leader. And
he was super lit up. I will say, I have almost never seen him that lit up as he was at that town hall. I was really impressed. I thought it was a great intro speech. Then they kind of went back and forth there. I thought that was awesome. I thought he did a great job, and just super lit up and engaged. And I will say, I've seen him with the other candidates. Like, I watched part of like a Nikki Haley event. I think like a Tim Scott one. He wasn't as lit up. I will say that.
Yeah, and then of course you're not going to see him. You're not going to see him with Trump walking around. I mean, he's definitely
he is an anti-Trump person. Absolutely, always has been.
Okay, well, I there are some things that we ignored about Trump, and at this point, it's like, who's going to be the leader? And I see these guys, and I see DeSantis, and I see DeSantis as a guy who is very unifying. I mean, that people can get behind, and
all factions of the Republican Party in Florida really do get behind DeSantis, right? And listen, I have said there are plenty of Republican purists up here who want nothing to do with Sununu or a Sununu endorsement, and I have said that I would proudly stand next to Sununu on that stage when he endorses DeSantis.
That'd be awesome.
I think it's important to show people that, first of all, politics is civilized warfare, and love and war make strange bedfellows, number one, okay? Number two, that there are sometimes far more important goals, and you can set aside your differences to attain those goals together.
100%. And I'm all for people coming around. There were Democrats that came around and have said DeSantis was right all along down here in Florida. And Trump can't come around to say this and to admit that he made mistakes. And to say that, okay.
Did you notice that DeSantis said, DeSantis said that. He said, he didn't name Trump's name, but he said, some people who just think that they did it all right and didn't make any mistakes when it came to COVID. And I was like, well, I think we all know what we're talking about. It was like he was almost word for word exactly what Trump has said about himself, right? No regrets. I did everything right.
Well, we see him do this all the time. Now, I mean, anytime he says something dumb or anything like that, he never switches or says, I did something wrong. He doubles down on it. And I think that's just kind of like how he's been his whole life. Never apologize, always double down. I think that might have worked for him in business. But right now, I mean, we need a guy with, it's great humility to do that, number one, but and then humility is also strength. That's a strength to say, and then we're also never going to let that happen again. Did you get to talk to Dr. Ladapo at all? And I
did. I had coffee with him before this event.
Oh, how'd that go?
It was good. I think we were just sort of entertaining him because his flight was early, but I know it was good. It was just me and Jason and another rep. And it was a great conversation. We talked about, how he got there, some of his, challenges being there and dealing with the public eye and all that kind of stuff. We talked about, I don't know if you remember this, I remembered, I said, weren't you part of the frontline doctors? Weren't you like one of the people up there on the Capitol steps
Oh
with
yeah.
Dr.
Oh
Gold? Remember
yeah.
that?
Yes, he was.
And he was like, oh yeah, I had written some op-eds at that point and I know her and she called me. He said, I had no idea what I was getting into at all. I got up there. He said there were only like 20 people there. So then I went home and the next morning my wife was like, have you looked online? And I'm like, yeah. I said, I remember watching it live and it got pulled down like 5 or 6 times. The links just kept coming down and coming down and coming down when their only real message was lockdowns need to end and there is treatment available.
And then really talking about the teachers unions, and that of course is a blasphemy to the establishment to say that the kids need to be back in school. That's one of the biggest things I remember from it, and I remember that really gave me hope when I saw that, and you saw these were real doctors, and they were saying, hey, look, we're not going along with what media and establishment is telling you. There is another way. And that was the first time anybody had said anything different outside the orthodoxy. And then it just went absolutely viral. And that's when we really saw the Facebook censorship. This was over summer of 2020. And they just shut that down and scrubbed it from the internet in every way. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. These are real doctors. And what do you think about the fact that, if you read this book and all, and it's very thin book. I don't know if you read this. It's Dr. Ladapo's book, Transcend Fear, a blueprint for mindful leadership in public health. It's got a foreword from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in it. Kennedy and Ladapo are friends. And I don't know when exactly they became friends, but they became friends. And he talks about his meeting with Trump. And that was brought up in here at the when he spoke. He didn't go really into it, but him and Bhattacharya and all these guys went to the White House with Scott Atlas. And I remember in the book, Ladapo says he was told, don't bring up hydroxychloroquine when you're in there, because every time Trump brings it up, he gets attacked. So just don't bring up hydroxychloroquine. I think he said Scott Atlas told him that. But they basically went in and told him, Mr. President, there is another way here. There's another option. Don't listen to Fauci. And we know that Trump did not listen to them.
Yeah. And I also... So yeah, he said that he's very good friends with Dr. Bhattacharya. That's how he got into that meeting. And Dr. Bhattacharya has been very helpful to us here in New Hampshire quite a bit. The Great Barrington doctors were really they're worth their weight in gold to us up here. But so I told a quick story. About a year ago, our commissioner of HHS here in New Hampshire resigned. And I thought, what a fantastic opportunity, right? Because currently, like a deep red state like Georgia and a hard blue state like California have virtually no difference in their health departments. The only health department that is different is Florida. And that's because of Ladapo. So I was like, oh, maybe we could get a better commissioner. So I actually got in touch with a group of people that helped DeSantis find Ladapo to begin with. And they're connected really with the Great Barrington doctors and that sort of thing. And we had some meetings and they actually had somebody who was sort of interested. And then when they realized what the screening process was going to be like and who was doing it, they were like, this isn't worth it. They're never going to hire anybody on our side of this ever. So they just stopped pursuing it, which is such a shame. We had a little bit of an opportunity, but I know that he was very connected with the Great Barrington doctors. And I think that is how he got down to Florida, which is really interesting. But I remember reading in Scott Atlas's book about that meeting, because Scott Atlas is the one who arranged that meeting with Trump, right? And that they were supposed to have an hour or something like that together. And all these doctors fly in, they get there, and they're told the meeting is canceled. And because it's like all these people like walking around the White House being like, oh my God, we can't let Trump talk to anybody that might, be against this narrative, So, and Atlas, keeps them there and is like struggling. Finally, they're like, okay, well, we'll give him 5 minutes. So after many hours, it was supposed to be 5 minutes. Now, Trump did stay with them longer than the 5 minutes, but I just thought it was interesting how dramatically they fought even having a meeting.
Well, yeah, and here it is on the screen. Here's the 5 minutes they got. That might be Michael Caputo over there? I don't know, but there's Jay Bhattacharya. There's Scott Atlas. No, I don't think that's Caputo, but it's Scott Atlas, Bhattacharya, and there's Ladapo. And I mean, you could just put in little text bubbles here, like Mr. President, Dr. Fauci is a little scumbag. Don't listen to him. But you hear Ladapo talk, and he talks in this very calm, soothing tone, and he's a Harvard graduate who, by the way, overcame a lot in his life. Read his book. He was born in Africa, came over here. He went through some horrible things when he was a child, and it's really it's just amazing. Because Ladapo was working on things in his own life, and God was working on him that in really preparation for what was going to happen, that he was going to get called to duty here in Florida after Ron DeSantis completely sidelined the Surgeon General at the time, Scott Rivkees. He actually had him removed from a meeting.
That video of that meeting is one of the most badass things.
Isn't this great? Let's just watch it again because we love it.
Environment, and this is a tough virus. We're going to have to practice these measures so that we are all protected.
Oh, really? Is that so? Sorry,
that we are all protected.
Do you see obviously a vaccine could be.
You just send this to me. I was telling Jason Osborne about this. I wanted to see it.
Okay, so he's asked by media. This was the Surgeon General of Florida in 2020. This was before all the real mask craziness and everything happened, but he's being asked by media, what's the time frame here until we can start seeing things reopen, get back to business? Listen to what he says.
Based upon what has been reported, probably a year, if not longer, is what some individuals have talked about.
Are there any questions for Secretary?
You hear the gasp. You hear the gasp there, because this was unheard of to anybody. I think it's after 2 weeks to slow the spread, or 30 days to slow the spread, and now we're talking a year. And this is where the whole idea of the country being held hostage until this vaccine came out, and then and until we could get back to normal. And you hear the gasps. Look what happens to him right after he spouts that crap.
Secretary Mayhew, I know she's got to run. Secretary, is there any questions for Secretary?
I got one of residents or staff in a long-term care facility after Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach.
You gotta go. Did you hear that? She said, he goes, okay. She goes, you gotta go.
He got.
You know what? Really, it would have been nice if there was like one of those giant canes, like in the cartoon, that came out and went like ripped Bugs Bunny off the stage. Like, he doesn't want to go, but she says, you gotta go. Got it? Exit stage right. You gotta go, buddy. He doesn't want to. He's like, no. He's saying no to her first. Then no, bye-bye. Bye-bye. And see you later.
Badass move. Cannot. That is a leader. Okay, so one more thing, and then I gotta go, Chris. Because I gotta go back to the kid. The thing that is the biggest difference between Trump and DeSantis. So Trump brings in Dr. Atlas, right? And he sees him on Fox News early summer 2020. He's like, and he brings this guy in and he tells him, go fight it out with Fauci and Birx. Not like, I'm going to remove Fauci and Birx and replace them with you. No, go fight my battles for me. DeSantis fires the people that are not with the program and replaces them with people that are with the program. And that is the difference between a leader and I don't even know what that is. Not a leader. A leader and a not a leader. Yeah.
Well, it's classic Trump that he doesn't want to make any decisive moves because he's always trying to please his lib friends. And we heard him over and over again go, "Oh, the media would have been mad." His lib golfing buddies who have his ear were all big Fauciites. So if he had fired Fauci, he would have upset them. And we can go back, we can play hypotheticals, but based on that evidence that he had him Rivkees removed from the meeting. By the way, Rivkees then moved up to Rhode Island, I think, after he was fired and became a little masked tyrant up there.
Yep.
But I think we can say for sure that that's what DeSantis would have done with Fauci and then replaced him, and which is very different than what Trump did. Thank you so much for joining, Melissa. Is it the trees looking beautiful up there?
They're all gone. It's all done.
All the leaves are already changed and fallen already?
Yeah,
Oh, wow, that was quick.
Brown. We're all done. Our peak season here is Columbus Day weekend.
Well, I will be back up soon, or actually when it's nice and warm again. And where is wait, hold on a second. Let's go to Center Harbor. Okay, I'm looking for us on the boat. Driving there. Anyway, where is it here? Hold on. Let me see if I can find it.
I'll visit you again next summer when it's nice and warm.
Okay, all right. Let's let me see if I can find the okay, all right. There we are up in wait, wait, there we go. Okay, yeah, there we are up at the cottage in New Hampshire, up at Lake Winnipesaukee. And I was looking for us riding on the boat, but I'll be back up there when it's warm again.
Okay.
You enjoy it, and
you know what though, Chris? You should really think about taking a trip up for primary night.
So have you decided when the primary is going to be yet?
No, it's still not set. It's going to be the end of January. It's probably going to be the last Tuesday of January.
I would love to come up. I would love to see the lake frozen over. It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, but no, Manchester on primary night is a hoot. It is a circus of all political circuses. There's this one main hotel, and like every campaign rents a room, and you could just go from room to room, like seeing all the candidates' parties, and it's a circus. It's super fun.
DeSantis should have me DJing his party. I mean, that would be fun.
Yes!
I've been telling him all on. DeSantis doesn't really party. He'll come out and dance with his wife and then take off. He'll do like a slow dance with his wife. But we party. So hey. But no, I'll look into that because I would love.
And you totally should be the DJ. That would be hilarious. I will put in a word for you with the guys who would plan it. Okay.
Please do, because I would absolutely love to. And but of course that is a really busy time of year for me. But I would love to come up there for that. Is DeSantis going to win that primary, Melissa?
I'm being a realist. I don't know. I really don't. This is the strangest primary I've ever seen. And there is the incumbent hump. It really, the way he set himself up strategically, it will all come down to Iowa, and that will determine what happens next.
All right. All eyes on Iowa. Then it'll all be on New Hampshire. Melissa Blazek.
In a couple weeks. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining. It's great to see you as always.
Good to see you too.
All right. So there is Melissa Blazek. And I first met Melissa back during the reopen time, which, gee whiz, that's going on 4 years ago. Can you believe we're already coming up on 2024? I mean, like 2020 is seeming like ancient history, but, storming the beach, taking, burning masks, having all those protests, demonstrations, and then just watching how DeSantis handled this whole thing, how he in time and in decent and in order, did everything necessary to return things to normal. And he talked in there about how he brought local governments to their knees, like the Broward government that was pushing this crap. And really, if you want to go to reopenchris.com, and you can see a lot of these things. He signed a law against the WHO pandemic treaty, banned the central bank digital currency in Florida, and Protection of Medical Conscience Act was a huge thing that DeSantis did that will make it very difficult for the way that, you know, you had the hospital protocols with the ventilator and the remdesivir, and that was all you could do. And if you didn't, we were going to pull your license. The Protection of Medical Conscience Act will protect that. So the next time that Fauci tries to push another pandemic, fake or otherwise, these doctors that don't want to do these protocols that are found to be lethal, really, can do them without fear of retribution in the state of Florida. And remember, like people like Dr. Littell, they had their certification revoked for COVID-19 misinformation. Now, that's from a board that's not in Florida. But the Protection of Medical Conscience Act will protect people like that. And, you know, Ladapo, this was a story I wrote. Actually, no, this was on Florida's Voice News. Look at that. I linked to a Florida's Voice News story. This is written by Eric Doherty back in March 16th. And you know, I see some of these guys, and you know, Eric's all right. He's a pretty good reporter, but you know, just stop listening. Listen to your heart, okay? And listen to what you know, and don't watch these stupid freaking polls, okay? If you are making your decisions about what you think based on some freaking poll, then you just got problems. It's not a barometer for what you should believe in. But Ladapo saying nobody should be taking the COVID shot. Okay, here he is.
It's not possible to give him enough credit for what he did when now you have a lot of, you know, you can actually hear the dissenting voices now. 2-3 years ago, I mean, it was like a pin dropping. There were almost no dissenting voices. And when someone did dissent, just even stuff that defies common sense in terms of how simple it is. Like, oh, maybe the kids should be in school. And maybe it doesn't make sense to try and keep a piece of fabric over a little child's mouth. Or maybe it's okay to still spend time with people you care about and love, and spend time doing things you enjoy doing and are good for your spiritual and emotional health. Just things that are just so true on their face. The world erupted. And Governor DeSantis the whole world really is grateful that he held his positions over things that made sense to him, and in fact made sense to a lot of people inside, even though they weren't vocal, when everyone was having a spasm over just the simplest drop of common sense. So I'm immensely grateful to him. I know that you all are too, and it's important to keep in perspective exactly what happened, because one of the things that the media they're just so brilliant. I mean, it's almost, I mean, it's so sinister how good they are.
I thought that was the clip where he says nobody should take it. But he's right on there. And he understands human nature, and understands what it means to be human. Just like John Summit would say, just like the song, I'll show you what it means to be human. Human. You know? And that we have need to socialize. And that we're not just industrious animals to be corralled and told, oh, we need to all live in these cities and be told have our lives completely structured by some social engineer in Washington. What gave that person the right to play God? Why are they in another elite class than anybody else? What makes them so special? Well, I'll tell you, they think of themselves as gods. That's why. They don't believe in God, but they look at themselves as gods because they try to play God. Oh yeah, just jab this experimental substance into your arm and your problems will be solved. And people were acting like this vaccine was this magical thing. Like, it wasn't just that it was going to protect them from COVID, which it didn't, because remember, everybody that would get vaccinated, they would come out and they go, oh, now I just have a milder case because of the vaccine. I just have a milder case. Wow, that thumbs up was cool. Where'd that come from? It's like I was just hallucinating that or something. Remember that? But, you know, they would act like this thing would give them some kind of magical power. Like, remember people were getting like the vaccine number and stuff, and Moderna like tattooed on their arm and stuff, and just weird stuff like that. It's because it became a religion. Let me tell you something. If you don't put your faith in God, you will put it in you will misplace it. You'll put it in a man, you'll put it in a substance, you'll put it in a relationship, you'll put it in a system, you'll put your faith in something. If you don't put it in God, where it belongs, and you don't understand that we're eternal creatures that are created in God's image, and that we're much more than just an industrious animal, that we have spirits that are eternal, and that we have fingerprints, that because our fingerprints, we put on things that we create. We have the ability to create. We're made in God's image. That's different from being a god. We're not gods, but we're created in His image with the ability to create. And we have emotions. We only have emotions because God has emotions. And the need to connect with each other. And what happened in 2020 was a war on God. And I think they brought that up in the speech. Somebody said that at some point. This was going against God. This was a war on God that was happening in 2020 with these lockdowns, shutdowns, and stuff like that. And if you don't fundamentally understand that, and you just think it was just that's just what we do with a pandemic, which is what we don't. The idea of quarantine, by the way, comes from the Bible. Leviticus is where it talks about quarantine when you had a sick person, because they would put sick people next to healthy people and they get infected. So the Bible, if people would just listen to the Bible, they would know that when you have a sick person, you put them away from healthy people for a while. That's the definition of quarantine. They redefined quarantine, just like they redefined all sorts of things, to say that, oh, it's now just, even if you're healthy, just isolating yourself, basically like house arrest. That's not what quarantine is. With Ron DeSantis, with, yeah, Amanda, good point. Do those people also say we should move on from January 6th? You know, anybody that follows Trump and is an acolyte of Trump saying we need to move on from the past is just utterly hilarious, because all this guy freaking talks about is the 2020 election. It was stolen from me. Guys, have a wonderful rest of your day. This is great. Please like and share. This is Chris Nelson. Thanks for watching.